Well, look, I'd really like to, first of all, thank Richard for this opportunity for us to work together. And I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar. When Richard and I started to speak about, the very serious issues of generating more opportunity for people, particularly in a time that's been quite a tough year for many B2B sales teams, we thought about the two issues that are really front of mind for any B2B salesperson, and that is, number one, how to generate more genuine, high quality sales leads, and two, how do I convert more of the leads that I generate? So Richard and I have been fortunate enough to be in each other's orbits for close on 20 years, when we used to have, well, I used to be in a very similar business to Richard's. I'm Ingrid Maynard. I'm the founder and managing director of the Sales Doctor. And we come together because our approaches to B2B sales engagement are very aligned. So I'm going to hand over to Richard to introduce himself, and then I'll ask him some questions.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. It's great to be able to work with you on this, and thank you very much for agreeing to do so. Yes, so those of you who don't know me, I'm Richard Forrest. I'm the Managing Director of Forrest Marketing Group. We're a business-to-business lead generation organisation. We're based in Sydney. We also have an office in the UK. So we do have global coverage, but very much a local focus. And we work with well-known brand names like Business Australia, Hitachi, Vodafone, British Oxygen, and Schindler, and companies like that, but also a very broad range of organizations that I call mid-tier. And as I said, we specialize in generating sales leads. So today what I'm going to talk about is that how do we generate, or how do you generate 500 new sales leads in a year for your sales team?
Fantastic. So Richard, without further ado, I'll jump into my first question to you, which is, we talked about, I think that one of the themes for this webinar being adding 500, which sounds a lot, 500 new leads to your business. So, really talk us through how any business can achieve that.
Well, the way to do it is, as you would probably imagine, given my background, is to add an outbound lead generation strategy to your go-to-market channels. Many companies don't do this, or if they do it, they don't do it consistently. And the key is in the consistency. So if you're going to generate 500 new sales leads in a year, it's not something you can switch on and switch off. It's rather like your social media, sorry, not your social media, SEO and your AdWords. You don't switch it on, switch it off. You leave it on there, it's working in the background. So consistency is the key. But if you add an outbound lead generation strategy to your marketing campaigns, that's the sort of numbers that you can get. And I'll explain how those numbers work. So if you take a person, if you hired somebody or put somebody from your existing team onto making calls for your business for a year, every week they would make a lot of calls, but they would speak to, I would expect them to speak to around 200 business decision makers every single week. Over a 50-week year, that equates to 10,000 business decision makers who hear about your business or your service or your solution. Our average across all the campaigns that we operate is around 1 in 20 of those decision makers becomes a qualified sales lead for our clients. So if you apply that maths to your 10,000 and divide it by 20, you're going to come out with 500 new sales leads in a year for your sales team to follow up. But the key is consistency. It's got to be done week after week, as you can imagine. It's also consistency of follow-up. Very often, it's easy for salespeople to get lost in the next new lead and not follow up on other leads, which may take a bit longer to generate. This is not a quick fix solution. It's not going to short circuit your sales cycle. And what I mean by that is that if your normal sales cycle is 4 months, then it's going to take 4 months for leads to come through this process to turn into sales as well. So consistency and follow-up are really important. And the other benefit, which I touched on a second ago, is that you've got conversations with 10,000 new business decision makers every single year about your business. Think about what that does over a year or 2 or 3 in terms of giving you a competitive advantage about these people who can come into your nurturing sales funnel and also become sales leads down the track.
It's extraordinary because it's a That's immeasurable, 20,000, 30,000 over 3 years. People that you know have now heard about your business and have been represented by someone as professional as the people in your team, Richard. So when we talk about sales leads, are these additional leads, or are these just, the same leads as those that make inquiries on the website?
Yeah, it's a great question. They will be, by and large, they'll be incremental. And the reason for that is that the people that we're talking to that become leads for our clients, and the people that you would find if you do this yourself for your own business, is you'll find that they are people who are living with a problem that you can solve and fix for them, or a range of problems, but then they're living with it. They're not yet looking for a solution, whereas the people who come to you online are already looking for that solution. So what this strategy does is it puts you in pole position ahead of your competitors in terms of winning the business. And we find that people are less likely to shop around when they come from a cold call like this, because you get a chance to build trust and understand their business and help them. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by people living with an issue. Several years ago, I went out to buy a new car, and I had 3 things that I wanted to do. I wanted a manual, a 2-litre engine as a minimum, and I wanted a sunroof. An hour and a half later, I came out with an automatic 1.8 without a sunroof. Don't ask me how it happened, but it did. Now, I really didn't like that car from the day I started driving with it, but I lived with it. And I lived with it because I thought it would cost me too much to get out of that deal. And after 13 months of living with it, I just had enough. I phoned my finance broker, said, is there a way to get out of this without costing me an arm and a leg? He did some research, called me back and said, yes, I can do that. And within a week and a half, I was in a manual 2-litre with a sunroof. And I kept that car for 7 years. Now, the point of the story is not to show that you can be sold anything at a car dealership, but it is about saying, if somebody had phoned me from a car dealer saying something like, how happy are you with your car? At any point in that 13 months, I'd have said, I hate it, or words to that effect. And if they had been able to say, well, look, if we could find a way to get you out of that and into a one that you really want, would you be interested? I'd have said, I'd have leapt at the chance. So that's a very personal example, but that's what's happening with people, the business decision makers that we talk to. They're living with an issue. They don't know that you're there. They don't know that you have a solution. They haven't started looking yet. So they become absolutely incremental sales leads for your business.
Oh, I love that story. And then I'd like to say that salesperson really didn't engage with you. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So when it comes to the type of consistent, almost, like having a lead generation machine, albeit a very personalized, a very specific machine operating in the background on your behalf, is that something that companies should or could do internally?
Yes, it is. It's straightforward, but it may not be easy. The key is you need to dedicate a resource to this. So that's either a dedicated person who's making these calls, or it's split across your sales team, but it's got to be consistently done. And one of the challenges is to make sure that consistency is done. And that's why outsourcing it actually is a very good option, but many companies do this internally, and you can do it yourself. So a person doing this, or the people doing this, need to have targets for number of calls they've made, number of conversations they've had, a number of leads they've generated. And then there has to be consistent monitoring and follow-up to make sure that they are hitting those targets. Of course, you can outsource it, but you can run it yourself. And many companies that we work with, sometimes we will work with them to get this going, define the metrics, and then they'll take it internally. Sometimes they'll have tried it internally and they'll give it to us. But it is something that you can run yourself, but you have to have the consistency throughout the year to make sure that it is going to work. But just in case you might find this a little difficult, I'm happy to send anybody who would like a copy of my book on how to generate B2B sales leads, a copy of this. If you send me your details, I'll happily send you a copy for free. I'm told that the unsigned copies are very rare and worth quite a lot of money. The signed ones tend to be a lot more common, but happy to share that with you if that's of any help.
Oh God, I love that. I love that. Now the good news is I don't have a book to spruik, but I should probably, I suppose, just sort of talk to how our two businesses kind of intersect. So, you know, your business really so beautifully works with companies to align that messaging, go to market on their behalf, generate those appointments. And then my business is all about B2B salespeople maximising their opportunities through having a consistent and effective way of engaging their prospective and their existing client base, so that they can achieve whatever outcomes they have. And everything that I do is bespoke. So I would really hope that people do take you up on that offer, because I know for sure that for salespeople, it's one of those areas that, you know, some people are just good at and some people simply aren't, for lots of reasons, but particularly that consistency.
I think one of the things about this is that you've got to focus on doing it. Most salespeople have so many interruptions in their day; it's hard for them to focus the time they need to on this. So a dedicated resource, whether it's internal or external, is a good way of doing it. But coming on to you, a great segue into what you do, and let me ask you a couple of questions too, Ingrid. So we're just coming out, and you're in Victoria, so literally just coming out of the COVID lockdown tomorrow, I think. What techniques do you think salespeople can be harnessing now that initially may have come out of the COVID response, but in order to build momentum for themselves in their day-to-day sales life?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. It's funny. I have the privilege of observing lots of different sales teams across lots of different organizations, and the ones that have a discipline around how they engage with their marketplace from a consistent and an effectiveness perspective have just continued on. The difference has been that they've been able to adjust to this new space where they haven't been able to have that person-to-person contact in person. So when COVID hit, B2B salespeople started to flounder. Well, some of them did. The ones who relied on just turning up and expecting that, that was going to do the selling for them, they're the ones that have struggled, because the people that have done well have been the ones that understand that having outcome-driven conversations is really the key to effective selling. So when COVID hit and they needed to use the phone, and they needed to use this kind of medium to engage as an alternative to that face-to-face, in-person contact, they were able to make their offer relevant and to make sure that they were valuing other people's times by scheduling a time to have a conversation and then coming to that conversation with an outcome in mind and having a structure that supported that. So they also were readily open to developing skills around phone. So for a lot of people in sales, the phone, I think the stat that I read was it's the 6th most used app on our phones. We use our phones for texting, for social media, for listening to content, for watching content even. But having a phone conversation that actually goes somewhere is one of those lost arts. It's one of those lost skills. And so again, one of the requests that I had during this time was from forward-thinking sales leaders saying, hey, my team really needs to, scaffold their skill set so that they can have better conversations with the people that they'd like to do business with, or have better conversations so that they're connecting at a different level with their existing client base. So we focused on that. The other skill that I think is really important, and I think can serve us well beyond COVID, is having sales conversations using online, whether that be Zoom or WebEx or Teams or Skype. But for people to be able to have a connected conversation using all of the verbal and non-verbal cues that they're able to pick up during, through this kind of medium. And it's a fantastic alternative. So the great thing that COVID's given us is an awareness that this is a perfectly fine tool. And in fact, it can be used as an effective and a cost-effective way of selling, particularly when it comes to the economic pinch that a lot of businesses are going to be feeling well into next year. and cost of sales is going to be a factor. So this provides any organisation a very viable way of going to market with their salespeople in a time-effective manner to progress opportunity and to make the most of the opportunity that's there.
I think it's here to stay, really, isn't it? The online meeting. I think it'll probably that kind of segs nicely into the next question I'd like to ask, which is I've talked about 500 leads. What's your understanding of that number, and what action or actions maybe do salespeople need to take to maximise the value of those additional opportunities as they come through? Because it's important. If you get the leads, that's one thing, but you've got to then be able to convert them, right, to make the most of them.
And Richard, I love that, because years ago when I had my business that was in your space, I made sure that people understood that it wasn't a silver bullet, that it took away a lot of that hard work that salespeople try to avoid and can't, because that's the best way and most direct way of getting in front of someone that's going to, or that has a need for your business and service offer. So it's not a silver bullet, but so I guess when it comes to salespeople, making the most of what they need to do, and where that number of 500 comes from. It occurred to me right at the start of COVID that if people are going to sell using, through this medium online, and meet with people, they could probably meet with 2 extra opportunities a day than they could in person, because when you're driving around as a salesperson, you kind of max out at about 4 to 5 face-to-face a day, and it's exhausting because you've got to get there, you've got to have that meeting, and even when they're in a geographically sensible kind of plan, you still can probably only meet with 4 to 5 people a day. But on using this medium, if you add an extra 2 per day, that's an extra 500 leads, or 10 leads a week times 50 weeks a year, taking 2 weeks off for holidays where we can't go anywhere. But, so really that's where my 500 came from. But I think that, back to your point, it requires a salesperson to be consistent. And the value and I think the real benefit of working with an external party like Forrest Marketing is that it provides that ongoing machine-like background, so that a salesperson can really focus on what it is that they do best, which is identifying, furthering and progressing that opportunity, making sure that there's consistent follow-up and follow-through, and that they can, really build from there. So it's like a baton changing hands, I would hope, from one to the other.
Yes. Now, I like what you say, and I think you're absolutely right. Zoom and online media allow you to see more people now, which is tremendous. I'm conscious we've got to watch time, but I do have a third question for you, if I may, which is how has, and actually what I should say at this point is, if anybody has questions they'd like to ask us at the end of this, we will take those and answer them. Please enter them into the Q&A section, and we will later this week provide a recording to everybody who's attended the meeting if they'd like to be able to watch it again. But my last question is, how has COVID and work from home helped salespeople to think about the commercial impact of the cost of sales to their organizations?
Yeah, Richard, I think B2B salespeople need to be far more commercially aware of what it is that they're there to do. So this is where they need to understand themselves as a cost of sale to the business, and so be thinking more strategically about, well, how can I maximize the cost of sale to this business? And that's usually by doing more with what I've got, and selling through an online forum is an exceptional way for organizations to really maximize this opportunity. So you can minimize cost of sales by making sure that there is a significant amount of time dedicated to speaking with either new opportunities, getting them into the pipeline, progressing opportunities along, or winning opportunities through this medium. Now, nothing beats face-to-face, I get that. But there are some significant cost reductions that come through, using this medium. For example, if you've got a team of 80 people who are on the road, so that's 80 cars, that's 80 sets of tolls, that's 80 sets of parking, that's 80 sets of registration, that's 80 sets of maintenance and leasing. So if you didn't need to do that, it really significantly reduces the on cost of selling, and can help a business really do more with the resources that it has, which I think is going to be even more important as we kind of go into 2021.
Thank you. That's really good. And I guess I'd like to sort of wrap up the presentation side by saying, look, if anybody out there is interested in lead generation from my side, if it's a conversation you want to have about your business and whether we can do that for you, happy to talk to you. But as I said, I'm happy to send people copies of the book. I'm not trying to spruik our services, but I am trying to help educate and let people know how they can bring these extra leads and also the marketing penetration that comes with it to their business. And Ingrid, for you, where is the place that you can best engage in terms of salespeople for any of the listeners who are on our webinar today?
Well, absolutely. So I think my email is the best way to get in contact with me, because like Richard said, it's so important for salespeople to be supported with a lead generation arm, whether that be a dedicated internal resource or a fantastic service like he's got. But it's not a silver bullet. And so your sales team really does need to make sure that it's able to make the most of the leads that are provided to it. And there's never been a more important time to upskill your B2B sales team than now. And when it comes to ongoing sales training, you need something that's tailored to your organization's goals, your customer base, and your existing team, so that we can do more together. So my email is ingrid@thesalesdr.com.au.
Thanks, Ingrid. I think that's absolutely right, because getting the leads is one thing, but if they're not being converted or dealt with, and cold call leads are different to the ones that come either as a referral or as an inbound inquiry from your website, whether it's an online inquiry or it's a phone call. They are different and they require a different process. I think that's where you can absolutely add value to people who are looking for that.
Yeah, no question.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we've overshot our time by a couple of minutes. I don't see any specific questions in the Q&A panel at the moment, but I will give people a chance to put something there if they would like to quickly. Otherwise, we'll wrap this one up and hopefully be back in a month or so with another topic for us to discuss.
Fantastic. So maybe the team can just, not now, but perhaps email us with topic suggestions or questions that you'd like us to tackle next time. Yeah,
great idea. So Ingrid's given you've given your email address. Mine's very simple. It's richard@fmgroup.com.au. And Sean, thank you very much for your question. If you could send me your mailing address, I'll send a copy to the you. So please do that. richard@fmgroup.com.au. That's F Foxtrot, M Mike, or F for Forrest and M for marketing. But thank you very much for that. And thank you, everybody, today. It's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much, Ingrid. It's great to be able to work with you.
Thank you, Richard. It's been such a pleasure.
All right. Thanks very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.